Hello friends, welcome back. Uh, we will take 10 questions from question number 71 to question number 80, and we will start with question number 71. The question number 71 is regarding AIIB, that is Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Now we will read the question. With reference to Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, consider the following statements. The first statement is AIIB has more than 80 members. Okay, now let us say you are not sure how many members are there in AIIB. AIIB will go to second. India is the largest shareholder in AIIB. If you know basic things about AIIB, you will come to know that it is a bank promoted by Chinese. So why do a particular government, a particular nation which is promoting that bank will give more largest share to some other country, and a country which with which it has some issues, border issues and various other issues. So think in that way, India can't be the largest shareholder in AIIB, even in logical sense. Okay, the second statement in that case is wrong. Accordingly, remove two options. So now it is quite clear, even though you didn't know much more about statement 1, but you knew the exact knowledge about statement 2, you are able to get two options, A and C, and in both of those options A1 is common. So now the debate is around statement 3, whether statement 3 is right or wrong. That will decide whether you are getting answer or not. Okay, now we will read statement 3. AIIB does not have any member from outside Asia. Now in general you may get confused with the name of the bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Now China has been promoting this bank at the global level, and it has like membership from many countries like UK, Australia, Italy. So those are not part of Asia. They are like out from Asia, like they are beyond Asia. So those countries are member. Just general understanding about the current affairs associated with this bank will help you in solving this question. So third is right, third is wrong. Okay, AIB does not have any members from outside Asia. It does have members from outside Asia. So answer is A only. Come to 72. What was the purpose of inter-creditor agreement signed by Indian banks and financial institutions recently? Now just have a look at the words. Inter-creditor agreements, agreement signed by Indian banks. It specifically mentions Indian bank and financial institutions, and inter-creditor agreement. Creditor is someone who gives money to someone else, and there are institutions which are giving money to others. Those are creditors. In India, creditors are banks as well as financial institutions like NBFCs. Okay, there is an agreement between these institutions, banks and NBFCs, and like in that way the financial institutions. Now we will read the options. To lessen the government of India's perennial burden of fiscal deficit. Inter-creditor agreement. Now, and these words, Indian banks and financial institutions, are they directly connected with fiscal deficit of India? Think in terms of logic. You don't have exact knowledge. I knew the scheme completely. The scheme was brought last year for the purpose of, the answer is D, to aim faster resolution of stress assets of 50 crore or more which are under consortium lending. That is, a consortium of bank is there and they want their money to be recovered. In that case, they will have an agreement among themselves that the largest bank, the bank which has largest liability, it will take lead in deciding the matters. That was this agreement. So I knew the answer directly. But even if let us say you don't know the answer, still you can remove some of the, eliminate some of the options. Okay, first option, it talks about fiscal deficit. It's not directly related with inter-creditor agreement. Okay, so first is wrong. Second, to support the infrastructure projects of central and state governments. It is talking about agreement between the banks. It is not talking about whether that agreement is related to infrastructure or not. They are talking about a communication between the banks. So second is also wrong. Come to third, to act as independent regulator in case of application of loans of 50%, 50 crore or more. Now we have an independent regulator, many independent regulators like RBI, then SEBI, now even IBI. Okay, so there is no mention of such a regulator. Okay, third is also gone. Then finally you get the answer. We'll come to 73rd. The chairman of public sector banks is selected by, it's a bank board bureau. Public sector banks, their owner is government, and the owner is government. The government has set up a bank board bureau, a special agency which will select high level officials in banks. Okay, so public sector banks, their chairman is selected by bank board bureau. Let us say you don't know the exact answer, but still you can remove some of the options. Now RBI, it's a regulator. It has to provide equal footage for private as well as public banks. If RBI is selecting chairmen, it will be a conflict of interest, conflict of duty. So RBI gone. RBI can't even think about having any share in public sector banks because it's a regulator, independent regulator. Union Ministry of Finance. Now public sector banks are little bit autonomous entities. Their interest is commercial, and their role of government in their affairs is limited. So finance ministry can't have direct role into banking. And think in terms of logic, there are so many banks, and Union Ministry of Finance has burden with many other things, preparation of budget and many other things. So he won't get that much time. And come to last, management of concerned bank. Indian banks are not Indian PSUs are not private banks. They are owned by the government. So management of that concerned bank can't take such decisions about who will be the chairman of that bank. Okay, if you know the direct answer, then it's the best question for you. If you don't know answer directly, even then you can solve, but it will take your time, your precious time, because you have got 2 hours and you have 100 questions and you have to attempt at least 80 questions. In that case, having knowledge will help you. Come to 74th. Now it's a very logical question. Even if you don't have knowledge about the statements and options, then you can solve this question. Now we will read the statements. Consider the following statements. Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board, PNGRB, is the first regulatory body set up by the government of India. It is a regulatory body. And the statement says that it is the first regulatory body set up by government of India. Now you can question this statement based on our understanding. Now you know that RBI is a regulatory body as well. It regulates banking in India. When was RBI set up? It was set up in 1934, even before the PNGRB. Now you may think that government of India, even then the government was known as government of India, even in 1934. Okay, so RBI is much before the PNGRB. And second logic, Regulatory body is needed when there are multiple companies, multiple agencies, both public and private, are into the picture and there is a competition. Regulator comes only when there is a competition in the market. Earlier, the natural gas and petroleum sector was led by government companies like ONGC. Later on, private sector was involved, like Reliance Industries. So, for us, regulatory body in petroleum and natural gas did come into picture only after 1960s, not before that. But RBI was even before that. So, first statement in that logic is wrong. So, you can remove 3 options. Now, you will directly get answer. Let us still we will read statement 2 and statement 3. Statement 2, it says one of the tasks of PNGRB is to ensure competitive markets for gas. Anyway, any regulator, its main interest is to ensure the competitive market, competition, ensure fair price. Okay. Second is right, 1 and 2. 1 is wrong, 2 is right. Come to third, appeals against the decisions of PNGRB go before appellate tribunal for electricity. Now, you have got answer from statement 1 only, but statement 2 is right, statement 3 you may get confused. But don't get confused, because anyway if you have exact knowledge about statement 1, even though if you don't know statement 3, it won't affect you. Okay. So, you may not be knowing this exact knowledge whether the appeals of PNGRB go to tribunal for electricity or not. You may or may not know. Even in that case, you can solve this question. Okay, the answer is 2 and 3. Now, it's a very logical question, very general question, whereby we in our day-to-day affair use mobiles, 4G mobile, 3G mobile. Earlier we were using 3G technology. Nowadays we are using 4G technology. Whenever we open our phone, the Vivo LTE is visible at the top of our mobile screen. Even with with such a regular use, if you are unable to solve this question, then you need to rethink about your knowledge. Okay, now we will read the question. With reference to communication technologies, what are the difference or differences between LTE and Vivo LTE? Long term evolution and Vivo LTE, voice over long term evolution. Now, the first statement, LTE is a commonly marketed as 3G and Vivo LTE is commonly marketed as advanced 3G. Have you ever heard this word that LTE is a 3G? No. LTE was always marketed as 4G. When the Reliance Jio came into picture, for using Reliance Jio on normal phones, you need to have an app, Jio Voice app, something like that, because that SIM card was not useful, was not adaptive to the earlier versions of the phone. Okay, so 3G is completely different and LTE is completely different. LTE is one step to 4G. Okay, first statement is wrong. Now, second statement, LTE is the data only technology and Vivo LTE is the voice only. Now, all of our phone have Vivo LTE. You open your phone, you will get Vivo LTE written over it. Now, with that phone, you can call, you can use internet. So, how can we say that Vivo LTE is voice only? Even let us see LTE. Can you use the Jio SIM card only for internet? No. Can you use Jio SIM card only for calling? No. You can use the same SIM card for calling as well as internet. That's quite clear. Second is wrong. Answer is neither 1 and 2. Any doubt? No? Okay, we will move on. Now, there is a question regarding Maternity Benefit Act 2017. Which of the following statements are correct regarding the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017? Now, the first statement is pregnant women are entitled for 3 months pre-delivery and 3 months post-delivery paid leave. Now let us say you are not sure, 3 months pre-delivery and 3 months post-delivery. Come to second, enterprises with creches must allow mother minimum 6 creche visit daily. And third, woman with 2 children, woman with 2 children women with 2 children get reduced entitlements. Now logically third is right. Why? The government's intention is to always control the population. Why will government give entitlements to the pregnant woman with more than 2 children? It would work as an incentive for them to produce more children. Always any government scheme, it will stick to 2 children only, not beyond that. Okay, third is right. Now 2 options are gone. Now the debate is about whether 1 and 2 are right or not. Okay, we will come to statement 1. Pregnant women are entitled for 3 months pre-delivery and 3 months post-delivery paid leaves. Paid leaves, there can't be a fixed formula. That woman should get a freedom to choose from when she wants to leave the job, she wants to join the job. She will give 6 months leave, but it could be 1 month before pregnancy, 5 months after pregnancy. Okay, there is a freedom. If you see the act, such a hard and fast mechanism is not there in the act. Come to second, enterprises with creche must allow the mother minimum 6 creche visits daily. I am not sure, but 6 is not practical when an organization works with a woman who is mother. Like having 6 minimum visits daily, that actually makes it difficult for the organization to employ that woman. Okay, so logically I exactly, even I don't know how many visits they are allowed, but even this doesn't go in practical sense. So if you remove 1 and 2, you will get answer C. Now we will go with the 77th. Which one of the following is not sub-index of World Bank's ease of doing business? Now keep one thing in mind, ease of doing business, it should include only those things which are directly related with business. Let us say I am an entrepreneur, I want to start let us say company. What things are directly affecting me? Whether I am getting land permit or not, whether I am getting environment permit or not, whether I am getting electricity or not, whether I am getting investment or not. These things will be more important for me rather than which kind of government is there in at our center. Whether that government is led by woman, men, right wing, left wing, it doesn't matter. For me, for starting a business, directly related things are important. Okay, so now there are 4 options. Think in terms of you are starting a business and which of the following things are important for ease of doing business. Among the 4, 1 is least important and 3 are the most important, and you have to identify which is the least important index. Maintenance of law and order. Second, paying taxes. When I am starting a business, I should know how much tax I should pay. You might be knowing, depending upon the tax rate, the investment rate changes. If the government increases a tax, there is an impact on investments or industry. So it should be part of sub-index. Registering property, it is also part of sub-index, because important. I should know how many days it will take to register a property, how much cost will get involved in registration of property. And now third, dealing with construction permits. Okay, these 3 are part of sub-index. This is not. This is the answer. And now, even if let us say if you have direct knowledge, there are 10 factors in ease of doing business. None of them is related with law and order. Okay, quite clear? Question 78. In India, extended producer responsibility was introduced as an important feature in which of the following? Now you must know the meaning of the concept extended producer responsibility. What is it? It means if Lay's is selling its product into market, tomorrow if the waste is generated from its product, it should take it back. That is what extended producer responsibility. If Lay's is selling his product, then it should recollect the plastic. It should take responsibility of the plastic. If Good Day is selling biscuits, it should take responsibility of plastic. Okay, that is the meaning of extended producer responsibility. Now we have to identify where this was implemented for the first time. Okay. Now the first is Biomedical Waste Management Rules 1998. The Recycled Plastic Manufacturing Usage Rules 1999. The E-Waste Rules 2011 and Food and Standard Regulations. Now we will directly, if you have the knowledge, then the answer is C. But even if, let us say, you don't exactly know what could be the answer, even then you can come to the answer using your common sense, general understanding and logic. Okay, think in terms of you yourself as a producer of biomedical waste, of plastic, of e-waste, of food safety and food products like biscuits. Is it feasible to recollect? Let us say we will take option D first. Let us say I am owner of Lay's and the government says that I should recollect the plastic waste, whatever is produced in the food waste. Is it possible for me to collect the chewing gum pockets, then Lay's biscuit covers, Lay's covers, biscuit covers? Is it economical? If I am taking something back, it should be economical for me as well. It should be reusable. Now we will come with B. Biomedical waste. Let us say syringe you throw, or the pills, the covers of pills. There is a challenge in biomedical waste that those could be hazardous. Okay, so it is difficult for biomedical waste as well. It is difficult for food waste as well. Come to recycled plastic management rules. Even here the plastic use might be very less, and it could be a distributed use. Like in a city, it will be found in all the parts of the city, like Lay's, the plastic used in Lay's, Lay packets, okay, Lay packs. It is very difficult for me as a producer to recollect that waste. Now we will come to C, e-waste. E-waste in general was very small at that time, especially in computers, in TVs at those times in 2011. Even the mobiles were not that much, like small mobiles were there, but smart mobiles were not there, and most of the e-waste goes to the industries. In industries, this waste is not directly disposed, it is kept in a particular location, and from there the producer who has produced it, he takes it back. First thing. Secondly, e-waste has very important rare earth minerals, and those are of very much reusable value. Okay, gold, nickel, cadmium, many other minerals and chemicals are there, that those could be reused. Even now, if you like in case of iPhones, you can exchange the phone, reusable. Okay, so this is the logical answer. Second last question of the day. The economic cost of food grains to the Food Corporation of India is minimum support price and bonus, if any, paid to the farmer plus. Now it says that what is economical cost of food grains? Government like the statement says that it's MSP plus what else among these four options? Now it's a very common and general question. Every year if you read India Yearbook, economic survey, there is a chapter on agriculture. In second part of the economic survey, there these things are mentioned, but in general there is a tendency among aspirants that they avoid such sources. Economic survey, India Yearbook, those are actually very important sources. Now you might be knowing economic cost of food grains means what? Whatever cost that Food Corporation of India is incurring to procure food grains should be the economic cost of food grains. Now one is MSP, other is bonus, if any, paid by the state governments, and third, it is only till storage. Okay, this is the storage and then distribution. Okay, whatever cost, firstly I will procure, then I will store, then I will distribute to the states. All this includes in economic cost of food grains. Got it? Whatever cost that FCI is spending on procurement, storage and distribution is economic cost of food grain. Okay, that's why procurement incidence means go down charges, that go down related transportation and every other thing. Okay, distribution cost, this is directly given in Ramesh Singh book as well. Okay, there is a chapter on agriculture in Ramesh Singh. There they have mentioned the word economic cost of food grain and they have given the components of economic cost of food grains. Any doubt? Clear? We will move to next question, the last of the day. In the context of any country, which of the following would be considered as part of its social capital? Social. You need to know the exact meaning of the word social. Social means when two people come together. Only one person can't be social. Social means at least two and more than two. Okay. Now there are many other capitals as well: economic capital, cultural capital, political capital, then social capital. Now economic capital is all about resources. Okay. Then political capital, your political connections, your ability to influence others, that is political capital. Then there is a cultural capital, which means your cultural history, cultural background will help you in gaining the knowledge. Let us say a singer's son becoming singer, actor's son becoming actor, it's a cultural capital. Getting? Carpenter's son becoming carpenter, it's a cultural capital. What his father had access to various technologies, knowledge, books, language, religion, that is helping their younger generations, that is cultural capital. Now we will read the first statement: the proportion of literates in the population. Literacy is a cultural capital, so it is not the answer. Okay. Now second, the stock of its building, it's an economic capital, not an answer. The size of population in working age group, it is also an economic capital. Working age group, working age population, it's an economic asset. And then level of mutual trust and harmony in the society, it's a social capital. Clear? Okay, thank you for listening to this lecture. Thank you for visiting Pathfinder IAS. Please share, subscribe, comment on the video. Please do visit Pathfinder IAS YouTube channel. Thank you. See you soon.